game's over.
Welcome into another episode of Triple Zeros. I'm your host, Josh Buckalter. Follow me on Twitter at JoshGBuck. Hit up the Facebook page, Clocker Sports, the website, clockersports.com, and the email address is clockersports@gmail.com. As you can tell by my head attire, the NFL has returned. That's right. Football is back. Professional football is back. We've had college football for a couple of days now, but that's not the point. We're talking about the NFL right now. The Thursday night football came back with a bang, actually. This with the in light of there being no preseason, you got the Kansas City Chiefs and the Houston Texans facing off in a rematch of last year's divisional playoffs. And it went just about the same way. So let's get right into that. First of all, the Chiefs ended up winning this game 34-20. It wasn't pretty, man. Houston jumped out to a real quick 7-0 lead. It looked like they were going to be at least competitive, right? I don't want to say they're going to run away with it because 7-0 is never insurmountable, but it seemed like they were going to be able to keep pace, as it were. That was followed, however, by 31 straight points by the Chiefs. And you just know that is going to be a long year. See, here's the thing. Let's go through the stats real quick, and then we'll talk about what some of the observations were in this game. Deshaun Watson of the Houston Texans went 20-32, 253 yards, a touchdown and a pick. Patrick Mahomes, 211, 3 touchdowns, no picks, 24-32 himself. David Johnson had a great Texans debut with 11 carries, 77 yards, and a touchdown. He also had 3 grabs for 32 yards, so he was back to his old self. It was good to see him doing that, especially from a fantasy team. That was one of those picks that I was reading about, wasn't happy about making, but he just kept popping up in several drafts, so hopefully he can keep that up. But the story at running back, at the very least, is rookie Clyde Elaire carrying 25 times, 138 yards and a touchdown. The dude was doing everything, and it was really good to see. He had 2 targets in the past game. He didn't catch either one of them. Now, they weren't really catchable, or he had one that was in his hands, but he got whacked. He got laid out pretty nicely. But yeah, on the ground, the dude was looking pretty good. And during the game, Maurice Jones-Drew actually tweeted out that he reminded him a lot of himself. So that's a really solid comparison, and not just because you have the hyphenated last name. That's not even the only reason. But it definitely factors in. It has to. Very impressive, though. 25 carries, 138 yards. Looks like he's going to be a focal point of this offense, much as many people were expecting him to be. Also from our fantasy team. Hey, listen, I'm in like 8 leagues, so I'm bound to have a little some exposure to everybody here. At the receiver position, this was not a game of surprises all around, but a game of guys that you weren't necessarily expecting to going off. Will Fuller, this was the one that you guess I guess you did expect. Bill O'Brien, head coach and general manager. We'll talk about that in a second. Had 8 catches for 112 yards. Bill O'Brien had told us that he was going to be used, or he viewed him as a number 1 wide receiver. So 10 targets, 8 catches, 112 yards. If he can stay healthy, he's always had the potential to be a very productive receiver. I don't know about number 1, but they're using him like one, so we'll see. It seems to be, though, there's also going to be still some target hog going on there with Deshaun Watson and one of his receivers. Moving out DeAndre Hopkins hasn't necessarily solved that issue. As you see, like I said, Will Fuller had 10 targets. The next guy was Brandon Cooks with 5. He caught 2 of them for 20 yards. After that, you got 4 to David Johnson, 3 to Randall Cobb, who didn't even really get much tick until late in the game, so that was in comeback mode. Looks like there's still going to be some funneling going on to Will Fuller. Hopefully he can hold up, because he has not. That has not been his strong suit. On the Chiefs side, you got some early moves to Tyreek Hill, but then it was the Sammy Watkins show. You had some sprinklings to Travis Kelce, too. He caught a touchdown. Tyreek Hill also caught a touchdown, but it was, again, the Sammy Watkins show who caught the 3rd touchdown. 7 catches, 82 yards, and really, like I said, it was the show, because he was getting targeted like Will Fuller was. He had 9 targets himself, so you see these two were just out here doing work for these quarterbacks. Again, with Patrick Mahomes and Sammy, they did their damage early, and then they had Elaire just out there working the ground game. So it was domination from start to finish for the Chiefs. Well, not start to finish, but from not even middle. I don't even know what you would consider that, intermediate. I don't know. Anyway, the Chiefs dominated this game, and one of the big takeaways that I saw, and we talked about it, I touched on it a second ago. DeAndre Hopkins no longer being around is definitely an issue. Now, we'll find out if it's an issue at large or if it was just an issue in this game because there was no preseason. There's a very good chance that it was the lack of live action for these guys to get familiar with each other contributed to the poor execution, the poor timing it seemed between the receivers and Watson. And really, we already know he's got poor blocking in front of him despite them making that big investment in Larry Tunsil. So it's going to be interesting to see how that evolves as the season goes on. But what I am noticing about him is that he's still playing the same way. Like I just said, he's still targeting one guy heavily. That was willful, and that could be a rapport thing. But they're going to have to figure out a way to – who's the physical receiver when you need to have that tough catch, right? That's the thing that concerns me about this group. And that's what they traded away more than anything with Hopkins is the comfort, the familiarity with he and Watson, the mind meld that they shared, and that big body, the physical presence at the wide receiver position. Now, maybe they'll lean heavier on the tight ends, and you saw Darren Fells get involved. Jordan Akins made a nice play. But you're going to miss that boundary guy that can make something happen, a chain mover, if nothing else, that's, again, a physical presence out there. We'll see how this group evolves, but right now, it's to me, it seems like that was an issue and didn't get solved until they went into the hurry up where you could see those guys out in space making plays and short. And that was actually noted during the broadcast that a lot of Watson's passes were shorter than they're used to seeing. And that could be, again, I'm sure, by design, but it wasn't effective. So that's an issue. That's something that people pointed out when the trade happened, the lopsided deal of David Johnson for DeAndre Hopkins, and they tried to justify it during the broadcast too, talking about contracts and how you'd have to pay DeAndre. And they didn't really. What's funny about that is they justified getting rid of DeAndre's, but not taking on David Johnson, which I know it expires soon, but that's not the point. It was just a weird. That's a weird justification to me for that position. But again, Johnson acclimated himself very well, very quickly to this team, so it wasn't a bad debut by any stretch. We'll see what Hopkins does on Sunday. I'm excited to see that, actually. And we'll talk about that in a second, too. What I don't get, though, is the multiple opportunities that the Texans had to be aggressive and try to stay with Kansas City. There was a graphic that got tweeted out, not a graphic, but a stat, I don't know which one, a comparison, real quick snapshot of the game, and it was a fourth and short situation in which Kansas City went for it and ended up getting a touchdown later on in that drive. The Texans did the same thing. They had the same opportunity. It was about midfield, and they punted, and Kansas City ended up scoring a touchdown. And it was just a breakdown of, I think it was from Ben Baldwin, actually. And it was about just basically coaching matters and how you can win or lose games based on little decisions like that. With a high-octane offense such as Kansas City's, you can't afford to waste possessions simply because you got antsy, right? You were weary of being aggressive because they're not going to be worried about it. They're going to go and get you. That's just what's going to happen. So I don't understand the decision by Bill O'Brien, especially after what happened in those playoffs last year, to then go ahead and punt the ball away. Why would you give the ball back to Kansas? It just doesn't make any sense to me when you do something like that. That was weird. But we'll see. And then the defense of Kansas City was impressive. It took, again, the Texans until the game was out of hand to start rallying and making a comeback, and it was an impressive performance from those guys on a defense that was really, really beat up and talked about just a couple of years ago. So hats off to them for making that huge transition in just a short 2 years. Of course, winning a Super Bowl is probably a better barometer than week one of an NFL season, but, got to give credit where credit is due. So, as I talked about, we'll talk about some of the other games that are happening this week and that I'm looking forward to. Number one, Packs, Vikings, Green Bay Packers, and the Minnesota Vikings. And I know, probably like, how the hell is a guy wearing a Bears hat looking for? Well, it's for the very reason that I want to see what the competition is like, and I also want to see these teams beat up on each other. These are the two teams that most have favored for 1 and 2 in the division in any order. You've seen, I think, Bleacher Report or PFF, one of the two, had Detroit winning the division, which I'm, whatever, calling me skeptical, but whatever, we'll see. But these two are who I think most eyes will be on for the winner of the division, and we'll see how they are, at least early in the season, first test. And also, as a Bears fan, it's good to not have to face the Packers for a change. Week 1, see you, Detroit. That game, I'll talk about that in a moment, too. This one is also important because you have two of the best running backs in the NFL in Aaron Jones and Dalvin Cook. We'll see how their workloads are managed. Dalvin Cook because of his injury history, and Aaron Jones because of the addition to the backfield of A.J. Dillon out of Boston College, the running back they traded up to go and get, the big body. We'll see how he is used in light of this backfield rotation that already has Jamal Williams in it as well. So that'll be something to keep an eye on. And then, of course, the quarterbacks, Aaron Rodgers and Kirk Cousins. You can't watch the game and not be looking out for them. Kirk Cousins has to get used to only having one receiver that he's familiar with, and Adam Thielen out there, because Minnesota traded away Stephon Diggs. And maybe that's a game I should have put down as one to watch, too. I believe it's Bills Jets, and I'm probably wrong about that. That's not the point. The point is, I should have said that because I want to see what Stephon Diggs does in that offense, that run-first offense that could tend to have a concentrated passing game itself because it's a lot of deep shots. Anyway, getting sidetracked. I'm talking about the Packers and the Vikings. Aaron Rodgers has been used to getting with one receiver that he's familiar with in Devontae Adams, and there's a lot of excitement about Allen Lazard, but we know it'll be a Jake Kumerow and Marquez Valdez-Scantling combining to platooning really to make a number 2 receiver in this offense, and then they're going to run a lot. They told us that. If nothing else, the trade up and drafting of Dillon tells us they're going to run the ball a lot, as they did last year. Minnesota, like I said, Kirk Cousins got to get used to just Adam Thielen. Now, they had Justin Jefferson out there, but he's not Stephon Diggs. He's not the same kind of player. So we'll see how they handle that. Maybe with Gary Kubiak, we expect him to be run heavy again. We'll see if they use more 2 tight ends. I know Irv Smith has been working a lot out split wide, so we'll see what happens with that. But that's one that I'm watching. That's the first one. Next one, Seahawks Falcons. This is for 2 different reasons. Seahawks are coming off an 11-5 season where they lost in the divisional round. Obviously, they just signed Josh Gordon, but he can't play yet. So I just want to see how a playoff team that tends to start a little slower, but not really slow. It's more just the ugly style. Like they can grind out some wins. It's just always ugly football early on in the season for Seattle. And then the Falcons, how did they bounce back? Coming off of, I think, their 3rd consecutive year without the playoffs, and Dan Quinn still has his job as a head coach. That's an interesting choice. How are they adjusting with Todd Gurley in the backfield now? Just are they able to I guess become a playoff team? They're coming off a 7-9 year. That's a disappointing season for a team that was just in the Super Bowl not that long ago. The third game, Cincinnati Bengals taking on the Los Angeles Chargers. This game is all about seeing Joe Burrow under center. It could be about seeing Justin Herbert too, but he won't be playing. That'll be Tyrod Taylor. Hopefully he does not, and hopefully it stays that way throughout the remainder of the game. I want to see how Burrow plays. The speed of the game, is it too fast for him? Is he a playmaker? Is he able to work with an offense that, by and large, is going to look like the one that Andy Dalton had to work with last year, save for a couple of returning pieces, obviously, in the offensive line? I'm also interested in seeing what this defense does now with the they got one of the quarterbacks is injured and suspended or something along. He won't be there. That's not the point. It's Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow was, like I said, it could have been Justin Herbert too, but because he won't be starting, that's not going to be the case. Also, I have to check in to see what's going on with Melvin Ingram. I know he was having the issues with his contract after Joey Bosa just got his deal. I know Keenan Allen just got his deal done. We'll see what the Chargers defense looks like without Derwin James as well. But again, this game is simply about going and seeing Joe Burrow in his first NFL action. Next game I'm looking forward to is the Niners and the Cardinals. San Francisco 49ers coming off that Super Bowl loss. Obviously want to see how they bounce back in their first game. We saw that there doesn't appear to be much of a hangover, if any, there's none, for the Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. So I'll be interested in seeing how the Niners happen to fare in the losing season, which we know typically is not very well for those teams that don't win. So Their follow-up campaign will be an interesting one to keep an eye on, and how they progress with all the injuries already starting to hit them at some very important positions. We'll see, especially receiver Deebo Samuel. We'll see what's going on with him. Again, Jimmy Garoppolo, a guy who I was hard on last year. I'll try to be more open-minded to his progress and what he does for this offense this year, but I still don't see it. And then on the Cardinal side, obviously, DeAndre Hopkins in his first action as a Cardinal, and how he works with Kyler Murray, who I've already put it in writing, is my pick for MVP this year. It might be far off, but a lot of that depends on how competitive the Cardinals are, and that's a tough division. But I think his performance, and they'll be competitive enough to make it happen. Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked here as well. That and him and Hopkins, that connection is what I want to see. How much do they still use Larry Fitzgerald? Kenyon Drake, that's a personal one for fantasy reasons, and there's a few that I passed over in the past couple of games, but this one is important because that was a pick I took early that was very questionable, so I need that one to pay off, and he's been in the walking boot, so we'll see how that goes. He returned to practice, so we'll see. Hopefully that means everything's a go for him. But this, much like the Bengals Chargers is about Joe Burrow, Cards Niners is about DeAndre Hopkins in his first game without Deshaun Watson. I personally, and Watson finished out with a pretty solid game. He had a rushing touchdown as well. I think that's going to look like Hopkins looks much better and much more in a much better place, much better situation than does Watson. That's just, I think in a pass-heavy offense with a quarterback who's going to be able to, I think Kyler will find him just as much, if not more, than Watson did. So get ready for that. Anybody that's got those two on either one of their fantasy teams. Next game, Saints Bucks. This is obvious, right? Drew Brees and Tom Brady. You want to see these two legends. We won't get them in the Super Bowl, obviously. Now we got robbed of that past couple of years. Boo. That was one that I wanted to see really bad. But we'll get to see them twice this year, and that's cool. It probably only happens once because I doubt either one of them comes back next year. We'll see. They don't seem to want to go away. They might be trying to outduel each other in that regard. But that's going to be interesting to see how are the Saints now with really they didn't do much, but they did add Emmanuel Sanders, which is the best number 2 receiver I can remember in quite some time on that offense. And then for Tampa Bay, obviously Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski and Leonard Fournette and Shady McCoy. How do they all acclimate themselves? I worry that there's some Dream Team Eagles to this, and I forget what year that is, and I don't want to speak the one. I want to say 2011, but that's probably not right. But that Philly team with Vince Young and Nnamdi Asomugha, and they had those guys, and Vince Young, we like the Dream Team, and they went on to be like dog shit. That's what I fear for the Brady Bucks, is that a bad offensive line that a lot of times force Jameis to hurry decisions is going to get Brady creamed, and his dreams of playing the 45 are going to be crushed and dashed by week 5. That's what I think is the biggest Achilles heel on this Buccaneers team that I can see. They're loaded at the skill positions. The defense is underrated and up and coming, and I think they are really talented. I just don't think they were built for Tom Brady. Now we'll see, and I think the line can be solid, but I think that they're gonna quickly find out that Brady is not Jameis Winston. And I don't mean that in the accuracy sense, which they'll notice that too. The lack of turnovers is probably going to be a surprise. Maybe that'll help them play better because they'll be able to get more consistent play from the guy behind them. But it's just one of those things that I look at and I'm like, okay, that could be a problem. It's not like they were a highly rated group, and now you got a guy who doesn't move nearly as well as the guy you just moved on from, who, by the way, will be backing up the guy that you're going to be playing against this Sunday. That's awesome, too. Now, hopefully, James doesn't get into this game because Drew will make it through okay, or maybe he does, and it's garbage time, whatever. But just an interesting side note. And then the last game that I'm looking forward to is the Rams and Cowboys, just because I want to see how the Rams' revamped offense is without Todd Gurley, who's that lead back down there. Brandon Cook's obviously gone now. Does Josh Reynolds step up? Do they go with Van Jefferson as the guy that they start bringing as the third one? Do they just concentrate it more, bring the tight ends more involved? Who knows what they do there? And then the defense, Jalen Ramsey and his new money. I always want to see what Aaron Donald does. Cowboys. Mike McCarthy as head coach in his offensive system. They added another receiver, another talented receiver in CeeDee Lamb there. They just paid Amari Cooper, and they have Michael Gallup. Now, my money would be on Michael Gallup to be the odd man out for obvious reasons. The trade chip, the guy you could probably end up moving for a cornerback, which they definitely need. But I'm interested to see how this entire offense moves as a unit. Mike McCarthy was a longtime Packers coach, took some time off in between that, and now he's taken over the unit that Jason Garrett largely, I don't want to say built, but had a hand in building, putting together, and molding. And it'll be interesting to see if he's able to get them over the hump for as a guy who kind of got ran out because he had grown stale with his own team. So, and not so news that I wasn't looking forward to hearing. Denver Broncos lost Von Miller for the season to a tendon injury. He's supposed to be having surgery to have it reattached. They haven't been specific as to what's going on with it. Sounds like Achilles. I'm not going to specify or speculate any further than that. They also have Bradley Chubb returning from an ACL injury, so they're just banged up all over the place. Vic Fangio is a guru, though, so he'll have those boys whipped up something right, I expect. I fully expect that to be the case. And then, lastly, in the NFL portion of the show, the Chicago Bears' expectations for me for this Sunday against the Detroit Lions are they are going to win this game. Historically, Mitchell Trubisky plays well against the Detroit Lions. I think three of his best games have come. I know three of his best games come against the Detroit Lions, but if something were to happen to him, and knock on wood, Nick Foles has also played well against the Detroit Lions. He's also carved up Matt Patricia's defense in the Super Bowl that Foles won for the Philadelphia Eagles. The Lions, I do expect to be a better team, but I think the Bears have been planning for this. I think this is going to be, and this is what worries me, that this might be the best performance we see from them all season. This might be the fool's gold game. They have one of them. They've had one each the past 2 years. The first year it was Tampa Bay. Last year it was Washington, right? You thought that there was a chance that they turned the corner after Mitch did it what he did to Washington, and then nah. And the Tampa Bay game, you thought it was hot, 6 TDs, and then no, Tampa Bay was just garbage. So that's what concerns me, that they're going to come out and they're going to look really good, and it's going to be fool's gold. Another news about the Bears, though, there was but there was a report that the Bears were one of the finalists to sign Tom Brady. And I thought about how hurtful that was to be released. I talked about in the article, was it the article or was it last? I've recently spoken about how ESPN has been kind of hard on the Bears. It's bringing up how bad it is, and we know how every time you see Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes, you have to be reminded about the Bears passing on them for Mitchell Trubisky. And I couldn't help but think to myself, who the hell is out here assigning these pieces to people and keep reminding people in Chicago what they had to go through? That is hurtful. Let it go. We've tried to move on. You should too. Hurtful stuff, man. But again, I fully expect them to beat the Detroit Lions, and I wrote about as much in my piece for Last Word on Pro Football. I actually wrote about it in American Bet Experts about a week ago, that I expect the Bears to win and take the money line. I have to read that again, what I wrote about them. But for Last Word on Pro Football, just this week, I wrote about the pass rush being able to get a fast start, that newly remodeled pass rush with Robert Quinn on the other side of Khalil Mack. Now, Quinn reportedly didn't practice, and Mack was a limited participant, but so far we're hearing they should be good. We'll see. No preseason, no warm-ups. Quinn came in a little later due to personal things and getting right. It's been a drag. Fingers crossed, but this is the perfect opportunity for them to go up against, or to get going, because they're playing against a line that doesn't protect very well on a team that passes a lot. So be good to see them get some damage done on these boys if they really, really could do something. If they're going to try to get started, now's a good time. Flipping over, and we're doing a little bit of a course correct or a change of pace here. This is how we started. We're back to how we started doing NFL first. Switching over, though, to the NBA. Bucks got sent home. Giannis and company got gentlemen swept 4-1 by the Miami Heat, and the prevailing thought coming out of this is Giannis is not a real superstar. His superstar status is in question. People are pulling his credentials and saying that Giannis is not that dude. And all I have to say is, duh. Now, I do get the appeal, right? Big dude, athletic as hell, has guard skills and a big body. But I don't think that people fully understand the superstar part, right? The super part of superstar. They get the star, but they just think superstar means you're really famous. And I no, it means you're really good and really famous. You can deal with all the pressure that comes along with the fame, right? The notoriety. And when you look at Giannis, you don't really see that. And where I've seen two areas that concern me the most for him and that I think are important are at the free throw line and in the fourth quarter. Now, a lot of people make a lot about him not having a counter move other than trying to bowl down the lane and drill his way to the basket, and that's true. But aside from that, I'm not worried about. It's kind of like Ben Simmons. I don't care about you not shooting threes. You got to get that free throw percentage up. In the regular season, Giannis is shooting 63% from the free throw line. Now, he's averaging 29, 13, and 5, 55% from the floor, 30% from 3, but 63% from the free throw line. That's not good. It's better than he had been doing, but it's not good. But in the postseason, that's dropped along with his points per game, which is down to 26. He's still at 13 and 5 on boards and assists, 55 from the floor, 32 from 3, but 58% from the free throw line. That's not good. You can't get worse at the free throw line in the postseason. You already aren't a good shooter, so dropping that much, you're back down though. That's bad. That's not good. I can't put it any other way. That's a concern because they're going to send you to the line when you're trying to drive to the lane all reckless. They don't have any other choice. It's either that or they give you an ambulance. So you're going to get hard fouls, but that means you have to make them pay. This is the exact same argument I have for Ben Simmons. It's okay if you're not going to shoot a three, but I need you to be aggressive. And if you're going to be aggressive, I need you to shoot free throws much better than you're doing. Giannis, as the MVP, looking like the two-time MVP, the current Defensive Player of the Year, which has no bearing on what I'm talking about right now, but you gotta do better. That your shooting has to be his only focus this offseason. He has to shoot free throws, mid-range, three-pointer. Free throws, mid-range, three-pointer. And really, you don't have to shoot the three, but you gotta get your free throws on. That's not good. That's a detriment to you and to your team, and it's reflected, I think, partially in your fourth quarter numbers. That's the other part that bothers me. Now, in the fourth quarter of the regular season, he was averaging 8 points, 3 boards, 1 assist on 56 from the floor, 28 from 3. And 68 from the free throw line. Now, that 28 from 3 is horrible. Again, he's not a great three-point shooter, but you don't need that. I'm not worried about that. 68%, that's better than his numbers throughout the rest of the season, the rest of the game. So that's fine. I'm okay with that. But in the playoffs, it's dropped. His points have dropped to 5. He's got another board, still at 1 assist, but now he's slashing 50% from the floor, 12% from 3, and 41% from the line. That's where I have a problem. That's where the issue for me comes in. If you're going to be the superstar MVP, face of the league, dude, I cannot have you fading in the fourth quarter and then fading even further in the fourth quarter in the playoffs. That's supposed to be you time. So at first I was reluctant to agree with it, but then I thought about it if I can look back at this and see that he doesn't have the numbers, the takeovers, right? The 17 points, the big. I'm sure he's had those games, but that doesn't immediately pop into your mind. You think of the struggles. You think of the airballed free throws, and that's what you see. And I think that's what the prevailing notion is here, and it might be ultimately the truth. Giannis is not a superstar. Maybe. And people got kind of jumped on him for it, and he didn't mean disrespect, but maybe Richard Jefferson was right in that Giannis is a Scotty that needs a Michael. He needs a closer. He needs a scorer. He's the point forward. He's the setup guy. He's the all-around defender. He can do everything. He also said Shaq. He gave really good comparisons. I don't think he said Shaq. I think Jay Williams said Shaq, and then LeBron, and that's when everything went all crazy. I think that he might have been on to something, and people jumped on him for the wrong reasons because they know. That's the other part. They were saying it too, but because he said it, they jumped on him, and it was a hater thing, and he had to apologize to Scotty and blah blah blah. But it's not just Giannis. I don't want to just lay the failures of the Bucks all on Giannis. So everybody got happy when Middleton scored that 30-some-odd point game and kept the Bucks alive against the Heat in Game 4. Kept them from being swept after Giannis went out after re-aggravating his ankle injury that they're talking about. He quitting on his team. Middleton followed that up with another solid performance. He's actually been shooting okay from the floor. But he, too, in the fourth quarter, disappears. See, you have to be able to elevate in the fourth. He's right there with Giannis. And this is what makes Giannis look even worse. But he is at 5-2-1, right? 5 points, 2 boards, 1 assist. What kills me about Middleton, though, is that he's shooting 27% from the floor in the fourth quarter during the playoffs. No, not good enough. So this team isn't built right. They're talking about Mike Budenholzer is safe in his position as head coach, but Eric Bledsoe's a trade candidate. One, who's going to take Eric Bledsoe on? For what? What are you bringing back that's of value? And then two, what does that do about Middleton's fourth quarter woes? His disappearing at 27% from the floor. You my number 2, and your specialty is shooting? And you're 27% from the floor in the fourth quarter in the playoffs. Now, granted, he had a couple of bad games, but you take those out, and I think it rises to like 28%. Like, it's not good. It's just not good. That's not acceptable. So, Giannis is probably going to bounce, and I think my piece that I'm going to write for Clock Sports is how that's about to send ripple effect throughout the entire NBA. I don't think anybody's even really considering all of the repercussions of it, but that'll be one that I write up for Clock Sports coming up probably this weekend sometime. Be looking out for that because the Bucks got time now. They got a lot going on. I don't expect him to make waves this offseason. I think he'll try to improve, Giannis, jumping back. But yeah, I think that going forward he will bounce because they're not good enough. There's no trade for Bledsoe that I can foresee that's going to improve this roster enough. They should have kept Brogdon by hook or crook and moved Bledsoe last year, but tight economy. Yeah, that's the other thing. The salary cap's about to go down after this halfway lost season. Nah, don't see Bledsoe being moved to anybody for anything worth anything. But stranger things have happened. The Miami Heat's title chances. I have to wonder about them. So they have the best record in the playoffs right now at 8-1. They are 5th in field goal percentage, 3rd in 3-point percentage, 2nd in free throw attempts, 4th in assists and steals, and 2nd in personal fouls. But they're 11th in turnovers. The only team that remains that's worse is the Los Angeles Lakers. So that kind of offsets the concern there, but it's still a concern because you can't win when you turn the ball over. And we know the Heat have stretches where they kind of just go cold and they just disappear. Their offense just looks dysfunctional. We saw that when Middleton was leading the charge for the Bucks after Giannis went down. The Heat took their feet off the gas, off the pedal, and let the Bucks win that game that they should not have won. That game should have been a blowout for the Heat. It should have been a sweep, but it wasn't. That's a concern. Again, the dysfunction that they can sometimes show on offense, but they're a tough team. They're gritty. That's why I picked them to come out of the East after my initial pick. Philly showed that they were about to just go out, sad. So sad. I do wonder about the Heat's title chances. Listen, I don't think they're going to beat anybody in the West, but they could definitely reach the finals, and I would like to see that for Jimmy Butler. That'd be cool. The other series in the East, the Raptors forced Game 7 versus the Boston Celtics. The Boston Celtics were up in this 2-0, and then 3-2 and let the Raptors force a Game 7. I do wonder what this says about potential collapse spelling for them long term. They right now though are first in opponent field goal percentage and 3-point percentage, so they're playing the best defense in the bubble in the playoffs. And I again, with that, you still wonder because we've seen them have leads and blow big. They led 30 points not that long ago against Toronto, and let them come back and take that game. So I just don't. I wonder if the talent, because I think Boston's more talented, but the experience for Toronto has proven to be invaluable because a lot of teams would have rolled over down 2-0 and then down 3-2 and kind of given up in that game 6. But you got 33 points out of Kyle Lowry in that game, 8 boards, 6 assists. Fred VanVleet gave you 21, 9 and 7. You got 23 points from Norman Powell. But this series has been won or lost. Or you got 3 20-point scores on the Boston Celtics. Meanwhile, you got none in the playoffs for Toronto. But this series has been won or lost by 3-point shooting. The Raptors in their losses are shooting 28% from deep, and in the wins they're shooting 37. It's average 37% from deep per game. Boston's seeing a similar trend. When they're winning, it's high. When they're losing, it's low. This isn't necessarily just a score. This is 3-point shooting. So, and I said this an episode or 2 episodes ago about how even these teams really were and how we're really getting to see that as they duke it out. Them going 7 games kind of just proves that it was a lot more even than. I got shit my record. I might have picked them. I might have had this. I got the Raptors winning the series. I might have picked that for 7 though. But yeah, this is a duke it out, knock them down, drag them out, whatever you want to, whatever colloquialism you want to use here, kind of series, and you like it. You love to see it. Kyle Lowry earning people's respect. Kemba Walker being able to do what he does on the big stage. Jason Tatum continuing his ascension, showing us his playmaking ability that he's added to the repertoire. Jaylen Brown becoming a more consistent contributor to this team. This is a series, man. The one negative has been Pascal Siakam being kind of mediocre. For all the talk of being the back-to-back most improved player, he's kind of disappeared and been MIA through much of most pivotal points in the series, and he's looking a lot like Paul George did for much of the earlier rounds of the playoffs. So we'll see if he comes around, but yeah, that's been a fun one to watch. The Clippers took a 3-1 lead. Kawhi Leonard's averaging 30 and like 10 or something like that, and basically playing point forward. He's doing a lot more than I think anybody would have thought he could have done, because there was a lot of talk about he can't command an offense, and they don't have a real point guard, and they don't, and they're going to have problems with it, but they seem to be finding out how to play with each other, and at the expense of the Denver Nuggets. But the story here, forget the game. Michael Porter Jr. calls out the coaching. He had 15 points on 5 of 8 shooting, but that was 5 of 6 at halftime. 2 more shots. And he ended up in the postgame saying this, quote, "I just didn't touch the ball. They didn't do anything different." He said, "That's up to play calling, the coaches, and whose hands they want to put the ball in," Porter said. "We kept going and joking Maul, and they were 2 amazing players, but I just think to beat them, we need to get more players involved. We have to move the ball a little bit better. We can't be predictable against that team." He also said, "If I'm going to be out there on the floor playing a lot of minutes, I think I should voice that concern. I'll probably talk to the coaches, just tell them what I see being out there on the floor, just letting them know. Look, they know what they're doing. Like, we got to swing the ball. We've got a lot of players who can play basketball and score. We got to get some more guys involved." So the immediate reaction from players around the NFL, around the NBA, Damian Lillard, shaking my damn head, in a response to another blue check. Yes, he is wrong. If you know, you know. I'm gonna leave it at that. Kendrick Perkins chimed in with "This ain't it, young buck." And listen, he's right that you got to get more people involved. Some of that is on Murray and Jokic, but some of that is on the coach not telling them, "Hey, make sure you're getting your teammates involved and keeping." But they don't. Murray's not a real point guard, right? So that's, you see why where you missed that. Jokic plays basically like a point guard, but down in the post. But they start a lot of offense through him down there, and that's probably where a lot of the choke off is coming, because he's already passing from a disadvantage because he can't see the entire floor like he would if he was at the top of the key. So Porter has a point, but I think the thing is the method publicly. And what makes it worse is it's not just him airing out grievances in the public. It's him airing out those grievances in the public before he said he talks to the coach. I'll probably talk to the coaches. That probably should have been your first discussion. and then you come out here and say this if you were going to say it. That's the only issue. It's not wrong what he said, but it's definitely an issue that he came out to the media and said it that way. But I like it in you. I like that he felt that he could say it on this team because, truth be told, when it's all said and done, he'll probably end up being the best player on this team if they keep him around that long. But there's decorum. This was one that, like, it just didn't need. What does this solve? Does saying it in public make it happen? Because you know what, it'll happen, but it'll be at your expense. And it sounds right. We could say it's a valid point, but it sounds like it appears as though you're only complaining because you didn't get your touches, and that's a problem. I think what we're seeing here is the team with best player theory in play. Something that I've talked about repeatedly. 7-game series, not a original thought. This is shared. 7-game series, team with the best player most likely wins. That's the point of having a 7-game series. And I think we're seeing that here. The Kawhi Leonard has been a man on a mission, seems determined to go and get his 3rd ring with his 3rd different franchise. It's insane. But that talent level is far and above what the Denver Nuggets and all their depth can muster. Maybe they push it to 6, but I don't see it going 7, and I really think it's going to be over come tomorrow night. Come Friday night. We'll see. Hopefully that's it, because then you can move on, because I know the NBA was worried about the East being too far ahead. I know they're glad they got a Game 7 out of Toronto and Boston. So the Lakers. Interesting talk here about LeBron versus AD. Who's the more important piece? I don't think it really is important, as long as they win. Obviously, I think that's what they would say. You have AD getting the numbers, leading in a lot of categories during the playoffs, just like he was during the regular season. You got Bron, though, as the straw that stirs the drink. So I just don't know how you separate the two, because I think Bron needs AD's abilities to take over a game, but AD needs Bron to put him in position and others in position around him to be successful, to make everything work. This series does have, after Houston was getting blown out for much of the night, they ended up losing 110-100, but it was much worse. They were losing by up to like 20 some odd points, or 20 points in this game. And you just wonder if they end up losing, because it's now 3-1 for them too. If they lose, what happens with this team? Do you blow it up? Tillman Fertitta's already supposedly had been looking for reasons to get below, or ways to get below the luxury tax. Could he just say, you know what, we're capped, there's not any moves we can make with this group, and what do you do now? Like, what's the pivot after this? You know, like, are you bringing in younger players? Then you're gonna have to flip those young players for old players again. Like, is this gonna end up being like a Westbrook in Oklahoma City, where ultimately you end up having to blow it all the way up anyway? So do they see that and go above and beyond and just say, okay, we're gonna make that happen now? Who knows? It does bring a lot of questions. Again, and Houston's been affected by the China issue. Daryl Morey with the tweet in support of Hong Kong. They've been affected by it more than anybody. So, good luck, Houston. And not only that. So Houston Thursday lost the opening of the NFL Week 1 NFL game in a horrible fashion, looking like they made a lot of mistakes this offseason. And then the Rockets looked like they didn't even want to play. I mean, it was bad for much of this game. Bad. People are going to blame people. They're going to blame individuals. I think that this is an organizational failure in Houston. So I'm not even going to go through it. I just think it's an organizational failure top to bottom. I talked about it a little bit last week about last episode about Russell Westbrook and his need to be better. Harden needs to be better, because there's times where you just see him, for all people who defend his defense saying he gets a lot of steals, there's also a lot of times where he just gets caught flat-footed. I mean, like, not even trying flat-footed while people are driving on him to the hole. That's not good. Those are issues. And then lastly, in this portion, Daniel House is being probed by the NBA for supposedly sneaking a COVID tester into his room. Just going to leave it at that. If you know, you know. You know the vibes. He denies it vehemently. They aren't sure of his availability for the next round or for the next game. But he's being probed. Now maybe you'll get to see Damari Carroll, but that's an interesting one. They already won't have Tyson Chandler for personal reasons, but he wasn't playing anyway, so that's not a big deal. That's an interesting story. I'm surprised he was the first one. Not surprised it was somebody from Houston, though. Just thought it would be somebody else. Last story, though. Billy Donovan will not be returning to the Oklahoma City Thunder. It was announced on Tuesday night that after this year, when his contract is expired, he is not returning. As the Thunder are pivoting towards their rebuild, he's probably going to move on to a contender. However, it has emerged that the Bulls are interested in him and that they are I think among the favorites at least, to land his services. No. Listen. Personally, I think Kenny Atkinson's better, but aside from, just take Atkinson out of it, I would prefer to go with the Ime Udoka route or the Wes Unseld Jr. route than Billy Donovan. I look at him like Scott Brooks, like a Brett Brown, a guy who was gifted with a really talented team and failed to maximize their potential. And so now, you're seeing him back out there, and he's going to be highly sought after because he's a very big name who's had a very good record. I think it's a 706 winning percentage in 5 seasons in the NBA. Came into a head coaching position after 20-some years in the NCAA championship with the Gators. But you had Hall of Famers on your roster and could 4 first-round exits. 4 first-round exits, right? And then this second-round exit, and people are going to say, and I had to catch myself, was backing him for Coach of the Year. But you forget you had the coach on the floor, Chris Paul. Chris Paul is the Coach of the Year because we know what Billy Donovan can do. Nothing. And I wrote about this with Pimpin' Ain't Easy, and I think it should be up sometime Friday, so look up for that one, pimpinaeasy.com. And I wrote about how Billy Donovan's not the guy. He's not, and it's funny because on the site co-expert Andrew Miller wrote that Billy Donovan is the guy, so I'm like right behind him with it. No, he's not. Wasn't on purpose, I promise. It wasn't intentional, but it definitely worked out to be that way. That's funny. You had Hall of Famers and you wasted their potential. I don't see the development. I don't see when Kevin Durant left and he was, remember the burner account incident? I wrote about this. What the article is about. It's in there. Durant tweeted out under the burner that he didn't want to play for that organization or for Billy Donovan, and that the roster was trash. And for all you Russ haters, and I threw this in there too because I love to bring this part up, how they say Russ ran off KD. In this tweet that he thought was coming from a burner, he said, and not Russ. Imagine if you took Russ off that team, how much they would suck. So it wasn't Russ that he left because the roster sucked and Donovan sucked. They had listen. Billy Donovan is Scott Brooks and Brett Brown. So whatever your opinion is of them, it should be of him. That's what I'll say. And personally, I don't have a very high one of them as coaches. That's how I'm with Billy Donovan. Now you might say you feel the same with Kenny Atkinson. Cool. That's fine. I'm not even going to argue with you on that. Like I said, separate the two, and I still have an issue with Billy Donovan being the guy. I'd much rather see them go with the connections to Eversley and Karnisovas and Udoka and Unseld Jr. respectively. So that's my 2 cents on that part. That's going to do it for this episode of Triple Zeros. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at JoshyBuck. Hit with the Facebook page, Clocker Sports, website, clockersports.com, email address, clockersports@gmail.com, and of course, read the stuff, Last Word on Pro Football, pimpinainteasy.com, American Betting Experts, and of course, clockersports.com. Until the very next time, I think you already know what it is, man. That's the sound of the horns.